and welcome to your award-winning The Reasons I'm Broke podcast, bringing you the reasons we're broke through news and headlines ranging from comics, movies, TV, video games, and more. I am Daniel, and this week we are going through Sector 458 with the return of someone who is a part of the Film Exiles and is a part of this rotation of co-hosts. It is an honor to bring you back, Millennial Mike.
Hey. Great to be back. Lots of exciting news to talk about, and that's always good. More reasons to be broke. That's why we're here.
That's right. That's exactly right. And Millennial Mike was great, especially on Discord, helping to prep these news notes for the week. So the Brokehead Core, I just wanted it to be known that you were a huge help in curating this week's notes.
Well, I try to contribute any way I can.
You are a huge help. Thank you very much. But let's jump into this week's news. First one here affects comic shops. To longtime listeners, they know that I manage a comic store, and this one has been on the FOC, the final order cutoff, at least 2 times now. Venom issue number 35, which on its legacy numbering is number 200, has been delayed another 2 weeks. This is a title that Marvel is stuffing with pages and is releasing, like usual, like they always do, about 20 different variants. All of these online exclusive variants. So if you're a Venom collector, this is going to really hurt your wallet. But they delayed them 2 weeks. Instead of another editorial or FOC delay, it's due to a lack of printing paper. According to Marvel, the delay was needed so that they could print their regular weekly order of titles as well as their $10 book. And do you have any of this on your radar, Millennial Mike, as far as just collecting this Ultimate issue?
I did actually look into it in advance, just because I was kind of interested in. The new Venom 2 movie coming out. I'm okay, more Venom news. What's going on here? So according to what I saw is that this is the final the final issue in this run. Is that right?
Yeah, it'll be the last one by Donny Cates, who has basically taken over the Venom series since this last issue 1, and it's done really well for Marvel. It is one of their top sellers.
From what I heard, yeah, I've heard a lot of great things, and his artwork is really good. I really like his art.
Stegman's doing the artwork, but Cates is the writer.
Right, Cates and Stegman, yeah. But no, I just like the art in all the Venom. And Stegman also did. I'm trying to remember what else did he do. Did he do Punisher? No. What else did he did?
I know he did a lot of Spider-Man as well. I'm not a Marvel reader, and I know he's an exclusive to them from what I remember, aside from a couple of indie projects here and there.
Or maybe it was Cates. He's done a few different Marvel stuff too, and he's done some DC stuff too, I think, right?
Donnie, I can't, if he did, it's been years, but he's been a Marvel guy for many years now. He's got that exclusive contract with them. He did Thor, and he might even still be doing it. He took it over from Jason Aaron, but he is one of their golden jewels right now. He's one of those guys that proved himself with pretty much Venom and Thor, and now he is one of their highest paid writers, if not the highest paid.
I mean, this is kind of a side note a little bit, but do you think they're going to try to capitalize on this, on the comics when the movie is close to coming out, or during the run of the movie? They're going to try to capitalize with the comics in some kind of way, or?
If it were a Marvel Studios film, I would say yes, but whenever it seems to be something by Sony or any other production company and it's not Disney making it, they more or less ignore it. They don't do any themed month variants like they do if it were, let's say when Eternals comes out, they'll probably do an Eternals variant month just to celebrate the release. When Black Widow comes out, they'll probably do something similar.
I wonder how much that's going to sell.
Yeah, well, that's the thing. That's one of the issues with that is they try to push the Eternals and Black Widow and all the things that don't even move merch based on previous sales and previous things that they've tried. And they tried with the books and it doesn't work. They just did the Man-Thing variants, which were basically Man-Thinged versions of all the Marvel characters, and nobody cared. It was crickets.
Well, there's not a Man-Thing movie. See, that's the reason, Dan, why it didn't do well. No
That's
Man
right.
Thing movie. They're gonna have to make a Disney Plus Man Thing series.
Yeah, and then
That'll
people
fix
can
it.
know who they are, and then they'll come in, buy the books because they have to read it before they watch the thing, and then that's always how it goes. The
Right.
movies and shows dictate the comics, and it's unfortunate. But
Mm.
I will like the sales for Venom 35. I'm telling you, I've got a lot of pre-orders on this book already. It sells extremely well, and it's a $9.99 book, and they keep delaying it. And every time they delay it, some of these artists they'll finish the variant cover art, and then I'll put it up on our store's Facebook page, and then people are like, "Yeah, let me get that one and this one and that." And since it's been FOC twice now, people just keep adding these different covers. And I'm like, you know what? It's kind of working out okay. It's not going to be one of those books where if you delay it too much, people will lose interest.
Do you buy the whole old rat of paper thing, or is that just another like
I,
COVID excuse 19?
I honestly, I'm leaning more towards they're wanting to pump the numbers because they do it every week. Every week
Mm.
they'll say this is the final order cutoff. Let us know before we send this to the printers, and then comic shops in the nation will send in their numbers. And if Disney or Marvel doesn't like those numbers, they don't think they're high enough, they'll re-FOC it for another week in hopes
Mm.
that shops will add more pre-order numbers or juice the numbers up a little bit more. So I honestly think that's what this is, and it could be that maybe it is a paper shortage because they are stuffing this one with many pages. It is a $9.99 book, and maybe their pre-orders were higher than even they anticipated. So it's very possible, but history tells us that when they don't like the numbers, they just re-FOC it. And this one's got a ton of artwork, a ton of variants, and when that week does come, it's going to be a forever sellable book too, which I'm not going to complain too much about. A Venom 35 or 200, however they want to number this thing, it's going to have amazingly cool artwork by Jock. Jock's going to be one of the biggest artists on this run of them, and once 10 months from now, after this book has come out and no longer on the newsstands, or on the newsstands, it's going to be on the wall as a premium back issue just because of the cover. Venom's one of those characters that people primarily like because he looks cool, not because they like the backstory of Eddie Brock. So that's one of the kind of weird, neat things about him.
He's like a dark single bodysuit, long tooth, long tongue, kind of wacky version of Superman. I mean,
Yeah, I mean, or Spider-Man, yeah.
I mean, that's Bizarro for Superman.
Right, that's true.
Wrong universe.
Did you ever see the secret origin to Venom when they were first kind of putting the character together?
The Null thing?
Well, I don't know if it was Null, but it was originally a female character that was going to be, but it was before even Eddie Brock. Eddie Brock was his own character, but it was going to be a female Venom, and then editorial felt that it wasn't a believable threat to Venom to have a female villain, so that's when they changed it to Eddie Brock.
Was it going to sell toys, huh?
I guess
like
not.
someone I know.
Yeah, that's true. But one of the neat things is, I think in Web of Spider-Man, which was the unofficial first appearance of Venom, someone pushes Peter in front of a subway train, and he's like, "Oh shit, my Spidey sense didn't go off. I wonder why." No villain has ever been able to do that, and that's when you're like, "Oh, I wonder who pushed him." And it wasn't until at that time it was a female character, and the backstory from what I remember, she was on her way to the hospital. She was giving birth, and they were in a taxi, and her husband had called the cab over, and with Spider-Man swinging through the street, chasing another villain, caused the car accident, a pileup, which killed her, and the accident itself killed her husband, and she had a miscarriage. And so she has this vengeance story against Spider-Man because of that. And that would have been the Venom character.
That's a lot more intense than Brock's version.
Yeah. Yeah. And if you look at the panel of the hand pushing Peter, which later on they would say it's Eddie Brock's, but it's a very feminine hand. So it's one of those things that if you ever find that book or that panel, you can see, oh, okay, so that's where before they changed it to Eddie. So it's just one of those neat trivia things. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. Yeah, I would have loved to see that. Maybe they'll do a what if,
That would be cool. Yeah, I would love. That'd be another thing that I would absolutely buy from Marvel. And something else that is coming to comic shops, and this was a huge relief from me, DC has revealed that it will be participating in Free Comic Book Day this year, and it's offering 4 comic books on August 14th, which is on a Saturday, so we're back on track to our regular yearly Free Comic Book Day. Yes, it's not on the first Saturday in May like it has been in previous years, but instead it is later on in the year, where I think more and more counties will be open to hosting a Free Comic Book Day, unlike if you were to try to host it this month. a lot of shops and states are still closed down.
Can I tell you something, Dan?
Yeah.
I've always thought that Free Comic Book Day was lame. I mean,
Why is that?
I- it just feels like the comic books feel like they're free.
Oh, I see
You
what you're
know?
saying. Like
I
they're like
don't know.
samplers.
Yeah. It's like I've always. I mean, there was a time when I was heavily into comics, and I'd buy them and I'd collect them and I'd read them in the libraries, and I was like, at that time when I was most into comic books, of course, I would pick up the free comics, and a lot of times you could go to the library or sometimes in malls at like certain like outlets they'd have like free comic books, Slackers, stuff like that. They have free comic books back in the day.
Mm.
But I just always felt like, man, like this is like the characters that I love seeing in their most truncated and least exciting version ever. So I've always kind of grown to resent Free Comic Book Day. Like I get the idea of getting people into comics who've never read comics, who've never invested in comics, and who just like, okay, why not? Pick up a pamphlet, look at it. That's basically what it felt like to me. But as someone who's heavily into comics, who like knows the stories, knows the characters, I was like, like why do I want to read a free comic? I'll just buy it. I'll just buy a real one. What do you feel
I'll just buy
that?
a real one. I like that. That's funny. No, I get exactly where that idea is coming from because, to be honest with you, it is a tool to bring new readers into the stores. A lot of these books are reprints or they are the first chapter in a trade paperback that already released. Now, the publishers have been getting better about it, in which they'll, like Marvel and DC, they'll release once a year, usually it's only one of them, an original story that leads into an event or it leads into a new series or miniseries. And that's where I'm like, okay, this is good because your Wednesday Warriors, they'll want that book because they know they're going to subscribe to that next Batman #1 or whatever it is. So they want that prequel or that Zero issue. And that's where I feel like, okay, that's cool. Let's do a little bit more of that to cater to those Wednesday Warriors. But overall, it's, as you mentioned, kind of a sampler holiday or a celebration of comic shops. It's an excuse for people to come out, get free stuff, and 9 times out of 10 they end up buying a Funko Pop or a pin or a decal or extra books off. A lot of back issues we end up selling because people, I think they understand the idea of, it's also, the books are not free to comic shops, so they know that, let's support the bookstores a little bit and kind of celebrate that we have a little local comic shop in our city or in our area. So it is good for comic shops. It is one of our biggest holidays and sales. It's right up there with Black Friday. Depending on the year, sometimes it is better than Black Friday. And you get cosplayers out, you get local artists, and really celebrate the medium. But if you're just a Wednesday warrior that only wants, new material, they know by now that this is going to be mainly reprints. But as I said, each year does have like one issue that's like, okay, I just came out for this one that's cool. And no, I get it. It's
if you're going to cons, I'm sure that's great. I'm sure it's great if you're like you're taking full advantage of the culture as opposed to just the free comics. Like that's just the centerpiece. That's just the wings on the table at the football game.
One of the cool things and one of the neat things I usually see each year is when I do see the regulars, they'll come out with friends and family that they normally don't show up with. Usually it's just them by themselves, or sometimes they'll bring their kids. If their significant other is actively involved in the hobby as well, you recognize them and you see them too. But it is neat that when they do bring in newcomers into it and kind of like, this is where I go every Wednesday, and the comic shop knows their name, like, hey, how you doing? And, it kind of shows that this is a whole thing. Like, it's a community. It's not just a local store.
Yeah, I was afraid, I was given a take that was too hot, like someone's got to understand, No,
it does absolutely make sense. It does. And I think even towards over the last couple of years, there's been a few issues that, like, here and there I'll grab one. And Sonic the Hedgehog I like to get each year. Street Fighter, Udon Studios, they always do an original story for Free Comic Book Day, always an original issue, something Street Fighter related. So I always have to get that one. And they don't make it available outside of that period. Maybe sometimes they'll reprint it in a trade, but I got to give props to Udon Studios because they really go above and beyond each year. But as far as DC, the reason why this was relevant to this year's Free Comic Book Day is they are with a new distributor, which is Lunar Entertainment. And ever since AT&T took over the brand and let it kind of run itself, they haven't been as active in hearing out comic stores or supporting local businesses. They've instead kind of done their own thing. They didn't do a whole Batman Day celebration like they did in the past. So comic shops felt like, okay, their focus is on the digital market, and that's fine, but we're feeling it, we know it, and we're not going to go out of our way for them either. But the fact that this year they are participating in this event with 4 comics, and those are Batman all of them are free comic book day edition, Batman, Suicide Squad, Teen Titans, Beast Boy Loves Raven, and Batman and Robin and Howard. These are 4 titles that, yes, they promote graphic novels, but the Batman one and the Suicide Squad one do promote the ongoing series, and they are prequels to current storylines, or at least upcoming ones. And it kind of gave me a little bit of hope that they are moving back into the direction of, we know the direct market is where we're going to make most of our money, not on people's phones.
Didn't something big happen with the whole direct market thing? Like one of the publishers or the suppliers, like Marvel or DC, like changed one of their big suppliers or something like that. Didn't that happen recently?
Yes. So all the publishers up until last year got all of their printing and comics done through Diamond distributors, and Diamond would send all of the comics to every comic shop in the country. As soon as the shutdown happened, that activated a clause in Diamond's contract with DC where they said, if we, for whatever reason, are not able to distribute books, then you have the option to opt out of your contract and go with a different distributor. And that's when, during the shutdown, that happened, and that's when DC took that opportunity to move away from Diamond. They instead went with Lunar Distributors, and there was
cheaper,
one,
I'm guessing.
I guess so. We don't still really know the reason as to why they went with these different distributors.
I mean, who would jump at the first notice if it wasn't good, you know? I mean, typically you get into a contract because it's good. It adds security for both companies, but like the moment it opens up, DC's like, yeah, I'm out.
Yeah, it was really bizarre.
Yeah, it's weird.
And the last time they had done up their contract with Diamond years ago, they asked for the same terms, except that this bit get added where, you know, if Diamond shuts down, that they can opt out of their contract. And as soon as it happened, like you mentioned, they were like, all right, we're going to go with someone else. So it was a huge deal. It still is. It affects my weekly tasks where I have to do double the work, you know, FOC for just DC on my day off, and then I have to do Marvel and the Independents on my regular Sundays. So it's really bizarre how this all worked out, because one of those distributors, which was Midtown, ended up not wanting to distribute DC books, and now only Lunar does the distribution for them.
Does Midtown do Marvel stuff?
No, they have their own distribution system, but they were only doing DC, and they decided they didn't want to do it because basically it wasn't worth the hassle. And it also restricted them from being able to enjoy some of the perks, like getting the high-end variants. And if you're a distributor, it kind of goes against your contract with the publisher to also, you know, play the game. You know, if you're a distributor, you shouldn't be able to get access to those 1 in 200s or whatever.
Right. Interesting.
So we all thought as comic shops that DC was going to go fully digital and that this was all a part of it. And I'm just happy that this does seem to be a good sign for comic shops, at least. They're kind of realizing.
Physical media.
Exactly right. Exactly. So here's the huge hit piece that Twitter was talking about. It was all over Facebook as well on the DC groups. And this comes off of the success of Army of the Dead, I'm thinking, or the Discovery merger, probably one of the two. Variety put out this top 10 best to worst Zack Snyder films. And they then broke down the article into different tweets in which they did put very specific language that was not complimenting Zack's work at all. And there was a lot of speculation as to, you know, if this was mandated by Warner Brothers. It was a WB hit piece in the same week that Discovery had done this merger deal with AT&T over Warner Media and all of its properties. And if this was Toby and crew, once again, trying to basically burn the house down on their way out and ruin this deal with Zack and all of Zack's friends and crew before they get to talks with Discovery, with David Zaslav and everyone else over there. And it was a really bizarre, out of nowhere article that made no sense other than the timing was very suspect. We know Toby's probably on his way out. What were your thoughts on the timing and release of this?
I've been thinking about it. I read some of these, kind of skimmed through it. I mean, once you click on the link, you might as well read it at that point
Yeah.
because you clicked, and here I am clicking back on the link. They've gotten 2 clicks out of me, so I might as well read it twice, read it 3 times for all I care,
We're saving everyone else to click.
Once you click it, read it as many times as you want before you have to click again. Because anyway, but this is my feelings on the matter. The if you look on the Twitter page, because we were talking about this a little bit before the show, but we were talking about how at the time it felt like, because we had one after one after one of these Twitter posts that were like snippets of this one article, and it felt as though they were like more articles, but it was actually really just one article, and it's a top 10 piece basically. And I didn't really realize that until like a day or two ago, and I saw a bunch of people kind of reacting to it. I have a few group chats that I'm a part of that talk about this kind of stuff, and I looked at it, and basically this is kind of a thing where if you're not well versed and you're not familiar with the whole atmosphere around Zack Snyder's movies and the way that works with the bloggers and the fans and the coded language that everyone uses and all these very specific things that you have to be in it to really know, then you could probably read this article and really not think anything of it. I don't know how much we want to really break this down, but basically, like, for instance, in the Owls of Gahul one, he's talking about like, they emphasize things like how it's dark for animation, and they kind of like throw some little kind of underhanded compliments at 300, and they emphasize the slow-mo this is the thing. Once again, people who don't know about it, it's like, oh, okay, 300 was cool. Slow-mo, I love slow-mo. Explosions are cool, and I like dark stuff. Dark stuff's pretty cool. But the thing is that the way that they say it, if you know where they're coming at, they're just kind of rehashing arguments about Snyder's visual style that are actually complaints, that are actually more complaints, more like digs. And it's just so slight, and it's so coded that it's really hard to like call this a hit piece, but it doesn't dignify and esteem Zack Snyder while he's in this very spotlight situation with, of course, recently Justice League, his version, and an Army of the Dead. It definitely doesn't do that. So, I really don't know what to say. They talk about how, Watchmen is edgy and, overwrought and da-da-da-da. And, they basically kind of say that it's sexist in so many words, and that 300 is macho and basically toxic masculinity, blah, 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 that stuff. So, yeah, I don't know. It's maybe I'm just so used to it. I'm just sensitized to it. What do you think?
I noticed that every portion of that article, or even the best rated one, which was Dawn of the Dead and on their list, was still a backhanded compliment the whole time. Like, this is what's wrong with Zack, and here's where he didn't do any of his weird slow-mo stuff, but instead it's a distilled vision of Zack and things like that. That weird language that you're talking about, where every bit of the top 10 was written by someone who doesn't like Zack Snyder's films.
Sure,
and that much is clear throughout all of it. I think it's obviously a trashy article, and it's meant to just get clicks. And I'm not as interested in personally, because I knew what the content was going to be, and that's why I didn't click on it until today when you were like, "That's just one article," and I'm like, "Oh, really?" So that's when I went and clicked on it and saw what it was. I was more upset at the fact that there does seem to be some weird timing to it, where maybe someone asked this editor, these bloggers and editors we know are not friends of Zack, and we know that certain ones maybe have gotten leaks in the past and have put stuff out there that hurt the movement or hurt Zack and his films. And I think this is yet another case of that. It's another one of that weird nefarious behavior, like when they released the recent 4K Justice League trailer, where to the point where Zack was like, now they're crossing the line. He knows that it's a personal thing. That's not just them being stupid. It's them deliberately trying to make the fan base upset. They're not doing this to please anyone. It's not
Right,
to
right,
like, oh, we're pleasing the general audience. It's really just to upset Zach, the fans, and to create animosity. And
right.
it's just egos at work. And I think this is another example of that.
Well, I think that for this is maybe before 2016, if you want to include like post BVS. I think even before that, we've always been well aware of the bloggers and different outlets and forms of the media have we've been aware of their ability to control the conversation and the narrative, regardless of exactly how you feel they do it, when they do it, and why they do it, and whatever. Everyone's pretty well aware that's a component of that, right? But it wasn't until I guess more recently that we've realized that Zack Snyder has been at the crux of a lot of it, and at the end of a lot of this. He's been in the sights of a lot of these bloggers specifically, like he's been targeted, and it's been clarified more and more now than ever, especially pre and during and now post Zack Snyder's Justice League. We've noticed that a lot. Ray Fisher's brought a lot to light. If you've been in it for a while, you put 2 plus 2 together. So, I don't think it's ever going to really end. And at this point, I just hope that Zach can find a niche somewhere. And then eventually I'll get to the point where I can just ignore these guys. Because, I've never respected these guys ever.
Mm-hmm.
And, you know what? I can say I was probably ignorant to a lot of this crap, at one point in my life. But it's been a long time since I've respected, Variety, Hollywood Reporter, whatever, cosmic super news or whatever,
Mm-hmm.
I have to say that, in general, I just hope that we can all get to a point where we don't feel that we need to respond or even that they're even have any real effect. And then hopefully that will in turn lessen their effect.
Yeah, it kind of lends them a lot less power if we're not. And it's such a weird thing too, because you and I know this so well, where we went through those years of not responding to some of these bloggers and reviewers, and that became the narrative. So then it all shifted, I think, in the last couple of years to, no, we need to call every one of these fuckers out because we're not going to let them set the narrative. It's such a weird, I think it's like some people are like, well, we need to do this and not this. I think the movement needs both. They need those guys that are going to immediately at the exact author and a tweet and tell them how whatever they want to tell them. And then there's the ones that are like, you know what, I'm just not even going to click on this and I'm going to move on. Right. I think both of it helps. But I do hope that you're right. We get to that point where these things don't have any effect and aren't really going to matter. I do kind of have a more optimistic spin on this, where the reason, they're doing a lot of this is probably because I would hope Zach has been or is going to be in some talks with Discovery, with the people over there. And and he is also coming off of this great success with Netflix and Army of the Dead. So maybe if it's not Discovery, Netflix loves him. If this means more sequels that get greenlit this week, and who knows, maybe by the time we're done recording, there's already another sequel that gets announced. But I think this is all really just a good thing for Zach. It's them trying to off-rail his future, and the fact that there is a future, whether it's with AT&T, Discovery, or with Netflix or some other studio, I think it's a good thing for the fans because we're there for Zach, not necessarily just for the DC characters.
Right. Exactly. Yeah, no, I couldn't put it any better. And I think as long as we see targeted articles, things like that, and that are kind of posed in a negative light toward him, that people still view him as a threat. That clearly means that he has a certain level of power. That's another positive way to look at it too. So yeah, hopefully everything works out for the best. There's a lot of things that we don't know about the whys and the who's and all that about Zach and his involvement in Hollywood and the bloggers and the studios. There's a lot of stuff we don't know, and there's a lot of stuff that we will probably never know. And I think we have to come to understand that and accept that. But I think, despite that, I think that there's a lot of positive things that are going to come of it, and we just have to stick to doing what we're doing.
Mm-hmm. One of the weird places that if Zach were to end up here, I would have to make some really hard decisions, and that is with Amazon. Longtime Brokettes know that I'm not a fan of Amazon. I work at a locally owned store, and they are a big threat to all local businesses, not just comic shops. They want to ship things. Stay at home. We'll ship you everything. Don't worry about it. Don't go to stores. And that's not a future I personally want to live in. Amazon announced this week that it will be acquiring MGM for $8.45 billion, which is 40% more than what prospects like Apple and Comcast were valuing the company at. So they're there to spend money. And one of the things that I saw in the New York Times article is that one of the representatives at the House were saying that this is probably some violation of a monopoly, and that it was Amazon fully taking advantage of that influx of cash that it's gotten due to the pandemic closures over the last year. So they felt like there should be some restrictions to these companies that are seeing, these massive percentage increases in their sales, and that there should be some kind of restriction to some of the buying power that they have. But that's a whole different conversation on its own. Is this something that you are in favor of? And are you a big fan of what MGM has?
So, I was looking at some of MGM's movies, and yeah, I mean, they do a lot of great stuff. They have a lot of great franchises. They've done a lot of great animations in the past. They own a lot of seminal works, Ben-Hur, like musicals, a lot of the big MGM musicals, of course, James Bond, even some of their newer stuff. I mean, they do a lot of great work. So yeah, in general, I do like MGM. And touching a bit on the whole Amazon situation, what has Amazon done for me to make me feel good about them, right? And what have they done to make me feel bad about them? And in general, like with my personal relationship with Amazon, they've done less things like to me to make me feel bad. But I know, thinking about it, like knowing the situation and the having some situational awareness, that yeah, them buying MGM is probably not good, and it goes against my general principle of this kind of buyout culture where everything's starting to become more unified and mono corporational, and that's not good for just the diversity in content we get, for the options, and even for jobs as well. It's not. There's a lot of negative things to it, and it's gotten to a point where it seems though that it's bad. But also on the other flip side of that, I like a lot of what Amazon's done, especially with their recent stuff like Invincible is amazing. I like The Boys. I've liked a lot of their movies. They have a bunch of great originals that you probably wouldn't even think are actually Amazon originals, but they are. Like some of them, let's see here. We got Manchester by the Sea. That was one of Casey Affleck's big breakout movies. Honey Boy, You Were Never Really There. It's one of Joaquin Phoenix's movies. Lost City of Z, Suspiria, and I can go on and on. So, they've had their hands in a lot of really great work. And I think we think really positively of Netflix because of the work that they've done. I think that we also have to give credit where it's due when it comes to Amazon. So I can see both sides of things. I just wish we could have the best of both worlds and the worst of none.
Yeah. Well, this deal does give Amazon a bunch of franchises like RoboCop, Rocky, Silence of the Lambs, and also the post-60s library. A lot of the older stuff from pre-1968 was sold off to Sony Pictures and Warner Brothers. So you're talking about things like, what's that massive musical? One of the most famous. Regardless,
Sound of Music.
Sound of Music. There you go. Yep, both of those are not going to be Amazon owned. They're already owned by different studios. Gone with the Wind, I think, is a Warner Brothers one at this point. But everything after that is what they were trying. I'm assuming they were buying this, and a lot of people speculate that James Bond was a huge thing that they wanted, Amazon wanted, and some people think that it will give them that edge that they want to compete with other streaming services like HBO Max and Netflix. I don't know if this is there's a lot of questions over
We're
whether
gonna
or
see
not
Tom Clancy and James Bond in the same movie.
it's possible. Yeah. I mean, crazy
I mean,
crossovers.
that kind of would be epic, but you know.
Yeah. Yeah. I
But
mean,
yeah, let's not get into the whole MCU thing. You know, let's
right.
not try to like replicate that. Let's just make great content on its own. How
Mhm.
about that?
Well, how do you think they're going to utilize these properties as far as are they going to put it all on Prime and make them all streaming, or do you think they're trying to compete on the theatrical side of things as well?
Well, you know, the thing is that Amazon has done a good job with basically their original movies. What I find with a lot of them is they're a lot better actually than Netflix for the most part with getting their movies in theater. As a matter of fact, you don't really ever know that they're licensed or in some way Amazon is involved in the production of the movies until you see it appear only on Amazon Prime afterwards. You know, movies that are on Netflix as originals typically start on Netflix and they'll do like a day and date thing, or they'll have like a limited theatrical run. Whereas like Manchester by the Sea, I think had like a full like theatrical run. I think Suspiria did. I think some of these movies, as I remember them, had pretty much full. No, they were smaller like kind of movies, but they had your standard small movie theatrical run, and then they would come to Amazon Prime afterwards. They also, I've done some research into them a little bit. They work heavily with a lot of like film festivals and things like that to get these kind of up and coming, indie films, licensed, and they'll help them with like theatrical runs and things like that. So it's in general, they seem to be a pretty positive force for the theatrical thing, which is a big plus in my book personally. So yeah, and they work on a lot of independent films, which I also am a big fan of. So I think that in general, they'll probably continue that trend. Amazon's all about physical product. I mean, they do have a lot of services and things like that, but one of their biggest services, of course, is Amazon Prime, which is shipping products. So I'd imagine that they still have investment in in that kind of thing. So as long as they can make money on it, I don't see why they wouldn't do it.
Mhm. I know some people were worried that James Bond would be exclusive to Prime, where it would now become a streaming property. But from the
Mm.
sounds of it, they would work both models. As you said, they've had movies out in theaters, and James Bond is a movie that everyone expects to see in theaters. It's one of those tentpole films or franchises that people will come out of their homes to go see on the big screen. And I fully think they will take advantage of that.
Probably, yeah. I hope so.
The Bond franchise is currently still owned majorly by Barbara Broccoli and Michael G. Wilson. They're calling it a 50% ownership, but Amazon is giving them, they're letting them retain creative control of the franchise. So they make the calls as far as even casting of the character. And that's all still handled by them, which is probably a good thing. I don't know if Amazon would, if they had full creative control, if they would then blow the property up into let's make series and offshoots and an animated thing, and instead
Right.
it's going to become. It seems like it's still going to retain its roots in being just films, at least for the time being.
Right. It always seems like when they spread themselves thin, trying to make every kind of consumable piece of content off of a franchise, that every bit of content becomes less. I mean, when Disney turned Star Wars into the MCU,
Mhm.
every bit of content would just became more meh, more kind of like, just content, as Scorsese would put it.
Right.
So, I hope that doesn't happen with Bond. I don't need a Bond cartoon. I don't need all these things. I want a premiere prestige format Bond content once every several years that I can collect and look upon fondly and enjoy. I don't need to have Bond in every aspect of my life.
I think with this last Bond 25 film, it'll be, I think, more or less what MGM would have fully done. And then once we get the
It takes
recasting of
time for that
Bond or
stuff to,
whatever,
yeah.
yeah, then I think the next Bond film after Bond 25 will be the product of let's see what, yes, it's not fully controlled by Amazon, but let's see what this can do under Amazon's resources.
Hmm. For sure. I agree with that.
Something that does seem to be becoming its own franchise and is having other prequels, we mentioned it earlier, is Army of the Dead. And there is going to be an episode in about 2 weeks where Palpa Kelly and I will do a spoiler discussion about Army of the Dead, but we're going to keep it spoiler free here. And I want to hear what you thought of the film and what you think about the future of this now franchise.
Well, I saw the film twice. I've gotten a lot of opportunities to talk about it with friends, and I've gotten time to think about it. And I enjoyed the film a lot. My expectations were disappointed. I don't feel as strongly as I hoped that I would feel about a original film from Snyder, written, directed, produced, and director photographied by Zack Snyder himself. So the last film that I believe that he had a hand in writing, directing, and cinematography, I believe, was Sucker Punch.
I think you're right. Yeah.
I think he did, though. He was like a trifecta there with that. And I like that film a lot. I would love to see, of course, the full directorial version of that, as he's made clear exists. Mm-hmm. But with this film, I just felt like, analyzing like with any other film, I was like, I don't know if I would personally choose that way of doing things or directing. And I'm usually very like, well, hey, who am I to tell Snyder how to do anything? But
sure.
But also on the other flip side of that, I'm a very critical person. I critique movies and I review movies, and I love film. I like to break it down and I tell you what I like and what I don't like. And there were a lot of things that I really didn't care that much for. Now, in general, I thought it was really a good, exciting action movie. It's probably one of the best action-oriented movies on Netflix, original Netflix movies. I watched that movie Extraction. I mean, pure garbage. I mean, it's super hectic. Like a million cuts a second. Color grading looks like it's gray and green basically. but this movie looks fantastic. I think it's going to add a lot of value to Netflix's catalog. At the same time, I don't have a really strong high opinion of Netflix's catalog.
Sure.
So that's basically where I stand on that.
Yeah, it's interesting that we're talking about Netflix and the quality of their projects, because a lot of them are, I don't know, it seems like anything that they buy up, even if they didn't produce it, they'll put Netflix original on it, and regardless of the quality.
Well, right. Well, they don't actually. So I believe a while ago they released news that they were creating a lot, right? Okay. They're creating a lot so they could actually make their own. They could actually produce their own content. I haven't kept up with that, so I don't know how far they are into that, and I don't know how many movies have actually been created by Netflix on the Netflix lot. But the fact still remains that the majority of all original or exclusive content is not original content by Netflix, but rather they just, they're still paying Sony or I think it's Paramount or one of their other partners to make the content that goes on their site. So,
right.
Yeah.
And this one itself does seem to be something that they bought up from Warner Brothers, and they were like, okay, here's the money that you wanted, Zach. It was the money that Warner Brothers would not give you. And there's seemed to have been no restrictions. And that's what Zach keeps saying, is they were like, no, go make your movie, do what you want, which is refreshing. And it's great. And we hope that more studios have that, mentality. And hopefully the changes at Warner Brothers will be for the positive. But if not, at the very least, they let Zach make his film. And as you said, this does bring a lot of value to Netflix. And I think if it had been released as a Warner Brothers picture, let's assume that he had gotten the budget that he wanted, I think it's more valuable to Netflix than it would have been to Warner Brothers. I think if under Warner Brothers, it would have just been another release and that would have been it. But Netflix wants to make a whole little universe out of it. And it sounds like they're happy to keep doing prequels and anime and maybe a live action sequel that he has already, he plans everything out regardless of whether or not he gets to make more.
Sure.
And I think that's at least a good thing for it. But go ahead.
I have two things I want to talk about. One thing that's more connected to this subject and something that's a little bit tangential. But the first thing, I guess, is, so with the whole Army of the Dead universe thing. What do you feel about that? I mean, for me personally, I don't typically. I mean, if anyone says, "Oh, we're making a universe out of this thing," and the thing just came out, typically I'm kind of hesitant. I'm kind of, a little, I don't know about that kind of thing. Because whenever I see that, all I see is just capitalism, and even with Zack Snyder's, this being based on Zack Snyder's film, like I know the Jay Oliva, I believe, is going to be doing the animation for like the prequel animation, and I like him, so sure, that sounds cool. There's going to be another prequel that's not directed by Zack. I mean, I like Zach, but I mean, my goodwill doesn't extend indefinitely, it's
Yeah.
like just because he's associated with it. I mean, he's a producer on Wonder Woman 84 for Christ's
Right.
sake. So, I don't think I really owe these things any extra excitement necessarily.
For these projects in particular, I read them as a vote of confidence in Zach and his, projects in his little world.
Sure,
I think
sure.
that's a good thing. So to me, that gets me excited for not only the answers that we're going to get for all the questions that we got from this movie, which I won't spoil on here if people catch it. There's a lot of Easter eggs in the film, and there's a lot of things that people pick up on, and there's a lot of theories, and a lot of which Zach said there will be some answers for in the prequels, both the anime and the live action prequel set. But as a fan of those things, digesting something and thinking about it and breaking it down, and then now they're going to give us some more answers to it. As a fan of that, I'm like, yeah, that's great, and I view it as a positive. But I can see where if it were Disney or someone else that had announced
Or
these
Warner
things,
Brothers.
or Warner Brothers, then
Yeah.
based on their track record, I would be like, okay, well, I don't have as much confidence in those things. And,
Right.
and Netflix, to me at least, from this studio, and especially the goodwill that they had in how they treated Zach with this project,
Right.
I'm like, all right, cool. Like, I'll watch those as well.
Right. That's how it feels for me. I mean, like while I'm still hesitant, I definitely you'll see me with on all those things day one because
Hmm.
I don't have any like I'm gonna definitely put my best foot forward when it comes to Zach and things that he's promoting. So yeah, absolutely, and I want him to profit in some kind of way. But when it comes to just like my own personal excitement for the quality of these things, that's a whole different story. I mean, of course, you never know until you see it, and that's how it should be with everything. But it's
Hmm.
like when you've been let down again, again, again by Disney and Warner Brothers, then it starts to become a lot less about try it before you buy it kind of thing, or buy it before you try it. I'm sorry. It becomes a lot less about that and less about the whole hopeful optimism about everything that comes out because you start to think, well, yeah, their track record is kind of proven otherwise.
Right.
Uh, my second question I wanted to ask you, and you're kind of talking about this earlier about the budget and things like that, is would you like to see, and this is just your own personal like opinion on the quality of a piece of content or a movie, would you rather opt for a big studio budget movie, right, with a little more restrictions on what the artist can do, or a lower budget, smaller studio streaming content, whether it be a TV show or a movie, with no restrictions on what they are allowed to do, I guess, narratively, or what they're allowed to say in the show? What would you prefer? Because honestly, as time's gone on, I've looked back at a lot of the movies that I've really loved, and
Hmm.
a lot of them aren't great movies. Like if I'm being like super critical about it, they're just great experiences, and they're big budget. You can only get when Warner Brothers or Disney makes something. But then you look back, it's like, well, that director probably didn't get everything he wanted to do into the movie, but he also didn't complain about it either. So
Hmm.
you would never have really known. So I
Yeah.
just kind of thought about that.
It seems like every project is a compromise for the most part. It's very rare that you get something like you did in Zach's case on Army of the Dead, where they're like,
Mhm.
no, here's your 90 million and do whatever you want with those 90 million, make that movie. And but when it comes to these huge spenders like corporations like AT&T and Disney, there will be compromises no matter what. And I think you're right. And as long as the artist is happy with those compromises, then that's when you won't hear about it for the most
Right.
part. And I think you're right. But as far as which one do I prefer, I mean, I've got to speak for the artist and go fully unrestricted and low
Do you
budget,
enjoy
whatever.
those movies though the most? I mean, at a principle, I am always going to push for directorial freedom. But it's like at the end of the day, I want to feel good about it, like morally, like, man, this artist really gave me what he wanted. But I
Mhm.
also want to see the spectacle that comes from a Star Wars, DC, Marvel, Bond, top of the line, no holds bar with the budget kind of picture. I want both of those things, and it's like I have to make a compromise. So it's like,
Right.
what do you feel about that? What do you enjoy watching more?
I guess I'd have to look at let's say my top three favorite movies, and I honestly haven't done enough research on how compromised these were. But that
Right.
would be Darren Aronofsky's The Fountain, which the studio went, we're not going to give you a lot of money, so this is it, and make your movie.
Mm.
We're not going to give you the Brad Pitt film that you
Right. Right.
initially were slated to make. So I don't know if that was a compromised version or not. City Lights by Charlie Chaplin. I doubt there were many restrictions back then either. So
Right. Right.
that's my second one. And then I really like American Psycho. I think that's probably my third favorite movie. And
Oh
that's
yeah.
another
Then
one that I'm like,
yeah.
I think that just kind of went under the radar too. And it was another little low budget thing. So
Well, a lot of those are R-rated. They're meant for adults, and they have no reason to restrict them. Really,
yeah.
the audience, the target audience was small. But I mean, when we're talking about reasons we're broke, that's. I mean, I'm not sure if you're broke because of Charlie Chaplin.
No, I gotcha. Yeah, like merchandise and
Right.
all the
Right.
Batman
Right.
stuff
Right.
we're talking about. Yeah,
Right.
those are the IPs. I mean, I don't know. Like, I guess if I'm looking at my top three movies, I mean, no, there's no Star Wars in my top 10. There's no.
Right.
I don't think there's any DCEU films that are in my top 10 movies of all time either. So
Right.
I can't say that a big budget thing is what I would ask for, but I see what you're saying. That is a good
Yeah.
question because every fan has to say if they're a fan of the film itself or a franchise, like a Star Wars fan or
Right.
a DC Extended Universe fan, they have to say that they would want to be okay with compromises because you need it in movies that are going to
order
cost
to make the
millions
mo-
and millions.
Exactly. It's like when are we going to be satisfied with that? That's going to be a question we're never going to answer.
Right.
But it's just like I want to see a big movie every once in a while. I mean, I love indie stuff. I love the small stuff that has no compromise that can tell these niche stories. But like, I want to blow my mind like with a crazy like over the top popcorn movie. So
I almost feel like maybe the answer lies in, and this is a weird example, but when those Sony Spider-Man emails leaked, when they were like,
Mhm.
these are our restrictions for Peter Parker. And if they were to, it almost feels like the answer is that of, okay, we own the IP. Here's the things you can and cannot do with this character. And these are the themes you can and cannot explore.
right.
And any artist that's like, okay, I'm willing to work under those. And here's my script and all of that. That
Right.
might be the answer there.
The
Instead
earlier
of-
you can get the restrictions out of the
Yes.
way, the better. I
Exactly.
don't like the idea of studio executives hovering over directors.
Right.
Like that's, I think, where most of us have the issue. If I'm to make a assessment.
Well, it's like Zach was saying, he had Jeff Johns babysitting at one
Yeah.
point, and that's the kind of shit that's like, no, you guys saw the script, you guys know where the story's going. Now, why are we making changes now? Why are we?
Right.
And it's that's where it sucks. I think you're right. That's where we pinpointed
someone
that.
posted something on Twitter like, "Oh no, we have to change everything."
yeah. It's like, no,
Yeah.
I'm working under your parameters. We were agreeing on this. We were on the same page. Why are we changing direction now? That's not what I agreed to. It's like
Yeah.
when Ben Affleck signed on to be Batman, he's like, okay, I signed on knowing that this is where the arc is going. This is where the character is going to eventually die, and I'll be out of these films. And when that all changed, that's probably when he's like, well, I don't want to work with Matt Reeves. I don't want to do that. And I totally get it because that's a
Yeah.
full change, and it's not what you signed up for in the first place.
I agree with that. No, I when it comes down to it, I think that's the real issue. Good point.
Like set the ground rules at the beginning and then go from there whenever possible.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of Netflix talk, though. We're going to end today's episode with highlighting what's new on Netflix. This is everything that is coming to Netflix June 2021. These are the highlights based on what I felt we could discuss and some of the stuff that you have already started watching. So the first one on this list is a huge one for Netflix. They spent a lot of money on this. It was on Hulu. Seinfeld seasons 1 through 9. That's like higher than Friends level.
Yeah, it's so funny because when I first saw that, I'm like, Seinfeld, Friends, Seinfeld, Friends, Seinfeld. Oh yeah, they're different. I mean, yeah, I know that's probably that's a bad take, but I mean, I don't really like either one of them. I think they're both very boring. I never really got them. So, but people love these shows and they watch them just incessantly again and again and
Hmm.
again. So, these are the heavy hitters. You put that on your roster, and you got a reason to subscribe. Month after month.
Well, it feels like they're using the office money that is now freed up from them constantly renewing that contract, and they instead applied it to Seinfeld. It's like that level of Friends, The Office,
Yeah.
Seinfeld. It's those shows that people will forever rewatch on your service. You have all this new content, but people will stick around. And they're like, you know what? Let me rewatch another season of The Office or whatever. And Seinfeld's that one because they don't have The Office, they don't have Friends. This is the other one that Hulu's contract with them ended, and the price probably went up because it's Jerry and it's what's his name, Larry David.
Mhm.
So it was an expensive get for him, but I love it. I'm a huge fan of Seinfeld. I own all of the seasons physically and digitally, so now it's on Netflix as well, and I'm
Sorry, not
excited for it.
sorry.
Yeah, exactly right. And another one returning to Netflix is The Adventures of Sonic the Hedgehog. This is the Sonic Says at the very end in the 90s. Is that something you grew up with?
This is the one with when Dr. Eggman was called Dr. Robotnik, right?
Yes.
Yeah, okay, yeah. And his head was like some like weird like tumor looking thing.
Yeah. More Saturday morning cartoonish.
Right. Yeah, no, I never really got into this show because see, I watched a little bit of Sonic Underground. That was like some stuff that I watched. I watched Sonic X Man. I watched it when it
Yes.
came out on what was it, 4Kids? And even that was pretty okay. And then I watched the original Japanese sub, which is so much better, an uncut version. Maria. Great stuff. But no, I'm a big Sonic fan. At least of the I like some of the newer games in the show, but no, this is great for Sonic fans.
Something else that I can play at the comic shop now, and we saw a lot of Sonic comics, and it does well. The Big Lebowski, it is one of those movies that's on people's lists of movies you need to watch before you die. It's been probably a decade since I've seen this one. Are you a fan of The Big Lebowski?
I know they're making a second one, and I still haven't seen the first. So another reason to lose my cards. My my nerd card. But no, it's I like the director of this movie. He's done he did the Ballad of what was that one? Ballad of something. And he did a few that was actually Netflix original actually.
Okay.
That it was made for what was that movie? I don't have to look it up. I'll have to definitely check it out. I know the I like the main actor of this movie
Yeah,
and
Jeff
it's kind of like
Bridges.
one of those stoner movies that everyone says you have to watch. So
Right. And you always see the memes of Jesus, the Jesus, and a lot of stuff that
Mhm.
you probably memes that you're like, oh, now I get it after you will have seen it. And
Right,
I'm
yeah.
I'm
You
excited
catch
to
up.
revisit it. Yeah. Like I saw it the one time and I was like, okay, it was
The
fine.
Coen brothers. That's right.
There you go. I did enjoy the directing. That's what I remember the most, but I'll have to go back and really give it a serious rewatch. On the anime side, Sailor Moon Eternal, the movie, season one, it is on Netflix original. And I wasn't too
Day
sure.
one. I'm joking.
Yeah, well, I'm curious. Is this like a remake or is this literally the
Yeah,
movie
I think it's a
remade?
remake. It started a while back with I believe Sailor Moon Crystal. They have like several
Yeah.
seasons of that. I actually watched I think the first season bar like the last few episodes. I was hoping that it was going to get more exciting, and I always remember Sailor Moon being a lot darker than people remember it. I'm like, huh, okay, maybe I should check this out again, like the original Sailor Moon,
Hmm.
from back in the day. But I got to the end, and I was like, yeah, it's not that great. It just feels kind of like the animation feels a little samey, so
Right.
and just doesn't feel like very unique, and the story is kind of just, But the movies they typically have higher budgets, and it could probably get pretty exciting. So I don't know, maybe I'm gonna have to get back into it.
I
But
watched all of Crystal as well, the first season, and I remember liking it, but not enough to watch season two when
so
that
you're a
one
Sailor
came
Moon
out.
fan? You're a Moonie?
For Crystal, yeah, I did watch Crystal, which is the
Okay,
newer one or whatever. I never saw the
interesting.
original. I was more of a Dragon Ball Z guy, and I think they played
Mhm.
back to back. And as soon as Sailor Moon came on, I was off of it. But I did give Crystal a shot because it's something that Kelly grew up on, and she liked
Mm.
the love story between Tuxedo Man or
Tuxedo
Mask or
Tuxedo
whatever.
Kame.
And yeah, and so I was
That's
like,
funny.
okay. And Inuyasha, she really liked, and I found out that it's for the love stories, and I'm
Hmm.
not a guy that watches anime for the love stories, so that was one thing that I kind of lost interest on. But Crystal, for whatever reason, I don't know, it kind of held my attention enough to make it through that whole first season, and I might give the Netflix movie a shot because I like how much the manga sells at the shop,
Hmm.
so naturally I'll like that the franchise. I'll have a positive outlook towards it, even if I don't really enjoy the show. So,
Hmm.
what do you think about Netflix trying to capitalize more on
Anime.
weebs? Yeah.
Oh, amazing! As a matter of fact, that's like their single redeeming factor. I just I just watched a series that came out a few maybe a month or two ago. I think it's like a month or two ago in March. I think it was. Yeah. That was recommended to me by a friend called Pacific Rim: The Black. It's basically a spinoff of the Pacific Rim franchise,
Hmm.
animated. Yeah, it was great. I mean, the first episode was kind of slow. It was a little kind of Saturday morning cartoony for my taste, but then toward the end of that episode, second episode, it got really good. So they've doing really good with that. Violet Evergarden is another great one. There's another one called Children of the Whales. They have one called Be the Beginning. It's on its second season. A lot of original stuff. People love the Castlevania series.
Hmm.
So yeah, I mean it's fantastic. And the great thing about animation is that in general, to make great animation, you don't really need a super large budget. And
Right.
Netflix seems to be a proponent of, their more mid to low budget stuff. So I think that they're gonna really thrive licensing content from these studios who have had a history of making great content on relatively low budgets and releasing to the people that like to watch their stuff.
One of the things I've noticed as far as viewers of anime is that the general audience, so your kids growing up and then people that are more casual to anime, they're perfectly happy in watching whatever's on Netflix. I noticed when they put Naturo back on Netflix that I
Hmm.
had an influx of a lot of people coming in and looking for the manga. And the same
Hmm.
thing happened with Avatar: The Last Airbender, although
Yep, yep.
it's not really but a lot of people
Sure,
suddenly, a lot
sure.
of kids, a lot of generations, a new generation came in and they discovered the series and they're now fans of the thing. Whereas people that are hardcore into anime, and I mean people that grew up watching animes and they're considered like, your anime convention guys and all of that. People like Scott and Julian from Lazy Gaming Guys and all them,
Hmm.
they're more about Crunchyroll and Funimation, and they're the ones that are going to subscribe to those
Right,
avenues.
Verve, and yeah,
Do you think that and I've noticed that they don't view Netflix or HBO Max or any of
as a
those streaming
contender.
services. Right, exactly. What do you think that is?
That's a great question, and I'm actually very happy to answer that question for you. Well, I think that it's because Netflix, while one thing that anime, and being a long time anime fan, I think one of the things that we've always kind of repulsed at a little bit is the idea that people would like co-opt, or what's the popular word people like to use nowadays? Yeah, co-opt is a good one, like
Hmm.
anime, or appropriate it. That's the one. And I don't think that, see, like the thing about Netflix is that some of their animation, like let's say the Pacific Rim: The Black, I don't think that's a traditional, what you would consider like a conventional traditional anime to the heart of its studio. They made a version of Voltron that was done by the same studio that did Avatar: Legend
Hmm.
of Korra, which is like a Korean based kind of international studio. I mean, amazing animation, and it's got a very distinct anime style. It's a Netflix original. So, and Castlevania is the same thing. It's not necessarily like a, from the ground up anime, as I guess you would consider it traditionally or conventionally. So I think for a lot of like, really hardcore purist anime fans, I think they may feel that like Netflix is a source of a lot of confusion to the general masses as to what is and what isn't an anime. You can go to the anime section and you can find Avatar, and you can find this kind of like in between Avatar, which is like the new Voltron series, and then you can find actual, just straight up, Naruto, Inuyasha, all that kind of thing in the same spot, and people want to make more of that distinction.
Mm-hmm.
And Netflix kind of wants to like sell their own anime to you, basically,
Right.
however they can. So I think that that's kind of a frustration for a lot of people, and I totally understand it. Like there's a lot of people who will never feel the way I do about anime in its more traditional form, or it's more traditional is the perfect terminology. And I think that regardless of whether they're given like a semi alternative or a complete alternative that's not really what I would consider anime, it won't make a difference. Like they're never gonna be like a big anime head like me. So I've kind of come to accept it, and I do like all sorts of animation. That's probably a long-winded answer for your question, but that's probably has something to do with it.
Yeah, it's just I was curious to see if someone else had noticed it too, and I'm glad you did, because it's fascinating to me as a casual anime watcher to kind of notice where the trends are going and how these different consumers are behaving towards who hosts what. So it's just really interesting to me, just as someone watching on the sideline. And one of those things that I guess is considered an anime, and we'll kind of skip ahead a little bit here, is Godzilla Singular Planet. It is a season 1 thing. It's not part of the, to my disappointment, it's not a part of that Godzilla trilogy that I love so much. I think the first one was called like Dead Planet or something, and it's a whole separate thing, and I think it's its own universe.
Right. No, it's Godzilla Singular Planet reminds me a lot of Shin Godzilla. Do you remember the Toho Godzilla, the newest one in their new franchise for Godzilla, where like Godzilla starts off as like this weird like squirming lizard thing, and he kind of with the Japanese one. The Singular Planet feels almost as though it's in the same universe. It's got like this very like grounded take on it, where they almost like try to over explain Godzilla as opposed to him being just this big lizard that got nuked and now he's big, Like they put a lot of like a Snyder level thought of into everything. And I really appreciate kind of the design. Some of the elements, but with this kind of red, kind of like swamp like birthing liquid that the monsters rise out of, kind of has that same effect as it did in the Shin Godzilla movie, where when he's born, he has like this like red stuff kind of like coming out of him, like blood almost. So I don't know. I've been watching the show. I'm on episode 7 now, and it's pretty good. I'd say that the budget on it is kind of Netflixy, and they used a lot of CG for the monsters. That on certain episodes, when you tell they are investing, it looks good, but then other times it's definitely skimming the line. So, but in general, I like the idea. It's done by Studio Bones, which is a fantastic studio. They've done amazing stuff in the past, so I'm a big fan.
I'm excited to watch it. I was going to watch it last night, and it wasn't available yet on my app for Netflix. And I was like, "Oh man, how's Millennial Mike watching this?" I was disappointed, but I figured it was that or VPN or something. So if I enjoyed Singular Planet, which was a lot darker and kind of has this nihilistic, metaphysical type of all these themes that they explore in it. Is this not quite that? Is it more of its own thing? No, the one that's the Netflix Godzilla trilogy.
Oh yeah, the movies, right?
Right.
See, actually, I haven't seen those yet.
Oh my god, they're so good, man.
Are they?
They're my favorite Godzilla films.
Oh my goodness, that makes me so excited to see it, because the budget on those look pretty good.
Yeah. I think they had their own theatrical releases in Japan, and it was one of those things where Netflix bought up the distribution rights, and they're like, it's a Netflix original, and they pumped it on the app.
Right. No, that's fantastic. I definitely have to check that out. I do love Godzilla. I remember playing the Godzilla games when I was young. I played almost every single one for every console. So, and then of course the old movies, which I haven't seen in a minute. But yeah, you should definitely check it out. A lot of throwbacks. They have Anguirus in here. They got nice. They have Jet Jaguar. They even have him.
King Caesar, yeah.
King Caesar.
Oh my god, that's my fucking. That's my second favorite monster. Yeah. That's amazing.
Well, he's in like the opening, so he's in the opening. So it suggests that he's going to be in here later.
Well, he better be. They can't
it's that. Pretty awesome. So
I'm like,
I hope that you like it. Yeah,
one of 5 fans of King Caesar right here. The other one that is a DC original graphic novel, I guess it was a part of the Vertigo line, was Sweet Tooth, and it recently had its Sweet Tooth: A Return miniseries that came out, and now it's getting a Netflix adaptation. Season 1 is coming to Netflix. Did you happen to catch the trailer when they released it about a month back?
I didn't. Let me take a look at that. Also, you mentioned that it was a Vertigo DC project. So how did the licensing work with that with Netflix?
I'm curious about that too, because I wonder if, I think it's Jeff Lemire that writes the comic. I wonder if he retained the rights to it and then could then pitch it to whomever. I don't know how the contracts work when they did Sweet Tooth many years ago. I'd be curious to see that. But yeah, you figured it'd be like an HBO thing, but I guess we've...
Oh yeah, I saw the trailer for this. The kid with the horns.
Right. Maybe it could also be a Warner Brothers thing where they license these things out, but they still retain ownership of it. So it's very possible.
Yeah, definitely. Because there's still, even to this day, Warner Brothers made content on there. Army of the Dead being one of them. Any of the original stuff could be from pretty much any studio. There's no limit to who can license their content, put them on Netflix. So
exactly. Yeah, I'll be checking it out just for that. And I know some of the Brokettes, like Brian, longtime Broquette, and customer of the store too. He's a Sweet Tooth fan, and Jeff Lemire, so I'm curious to see what he thinks of it. And the last one on here is The Ice Road, which is one of the latest Liam Neeson films. I'm a sucker for anything Liam Neeson.
About him in Alaska driving a truck.
Yes. And he's just trying to do his work, but he gets wrapped up in something crazy, and now he has to use his skills to save people.
Yeah, right. And also take a few people out.
Probably. I just love that he always does those interviews of like, I'm done doing action movies, but then he does 10 more. And then people are like, I thought you were done. And he's like, they keep paying me like what I asked for. And then I'm like, all right, I don't think people believe that a 60, 70-year-old guy is running around killing these guys. But me as a viewer, I'm like, no, dude, that's Liam Neeson. Of course he can do those things.
Yeah, exactly. It's like, yeah, I mean, if you're Liam Neeson, you'll be 100 and you'll still be doing it.
Hell yeah. And I'd be happy. It's just funny how no one would have guessed that this is where his career would have gone, because he was in Schindler's List, did an incredible job. I don't even know if he was nominated for that. And then he kind of played that paternal figure for, he did Batman Begins, which was a twist on it where he was a villain, but he was still that mentor type of character. It was also The Lion, the Witch, and the Wardrobe, I believe. He was the lion in that. And then he turned into an action star because of Taken. And it's one of those things where I would ask Liam Neeson, is this where you thought your career would have turned? Like from that figure to, and Star Wars, of course, a big, as Qui-Gon, he's another mentor figure for Obi-Wan. So it's just funny that this is now where his career is, as this action star. And it's a little bit sad because I would have liked to have seen him in some high-end dramas, because I know his acting is there, but he's going where the money is.
Watch A Monster Calls. And Silence. Ooh, Silence. So good. You must have seen that, right? Silence
and Monster Calls? No, I haven't seen those.
Silence is Martin Scorsese, my man.
Oh, no, I haven't seen it. No.
So good. It's my favorite Martin Scorsese movie.
Really? Okay.
Yeah, that's a hot take amongst the cinephiles, but
I mean, is there a wrong answer to a Martin Scorsese film being your favorite? Really?
I mean, hey, it's like I think it's his it's one of his newer ones. It's different from, I'd say, a lot of the other movies he's done before. So it's kind of like the black sheep of the movies he's done. I think people feel like you're not a real Scorsese fan if you like that, but I don't know.
Right.
I might be projecting.
Yeah, I'll check it out. Is that on Netflix or no? Regardless, I'll check it out anyway. And we both lost our cards on this episode. That's the question
nowadays, isn't it? Is it on Netflix?
Yeah, that's the default one. No, I'll check it out for sure. But yeah, those are our highlights for this month's Netflix. Some good stuff coming to the service. Anything else you want to cover this week as we wrap up the episode, whether it does involve Netflix, Army of the Dead, or anything else around the horizon?
Oof. Man, we talked about a lot, actually. I'm surprised how much we made this stretch. When the show notes this morning was like half the size as it is now.
Right. And then the MGM thing happened.
Right, exactly. So that was a whole big thing. No, not really. Keep on buy those Zack Snyder's Justice League steel books.
I got mine a couple days ago.
On them.
There was a site called, I think it's Zavi, Zaavi or something like that.
Yeah, they do a bunch of steel books. They're like do the work on those. Yeah.
That's where I would personally recommend. That's where I got mine, and it's on its way. But it was on sale, $30 something plus shipping. So that'd be the place to go. It's sold out on WB UK in 20 minutes, from what I heard, including all of the Funko bundles and all of that.
Of course.
So one of those things that my coworker's like, did you get that UK one? And I was like, yeah. I mean, they're not. He's like, well, when's it come out to the US? I'm like, that's a good fucking question.
Mhm.
When is it coming out to the US? Right? Like,
I really want a box set, all
Yes.
steelbook for the whole Snyder saga up to this point. I would just, man, I would buy that so hard.
Did you see Film Gob's video of his Jim Lee steelbook
I
collection
did.
of those?
Well, I saw the thumbnail. I didn't get to click on it yet. I have that saved and a bunch of other. I gotta watch some stuff from Go Deep. I'm behind on my YouTube podcasts.
He showed off the Jim Lee collection, which you have Man of Steel BVS and Justice League is what Jim Lee ended up doing these special steelbook covers for it. And he pointed out that yes, it's the Justice League version of this, but it completes
But
that
its art
collection.
is so good it doesn't matter, you know.
Right.
It's
So he's like, I'm just gonna take the 4K disc from this one and move it on to that Jim Lee steelbook, and that'll be like
Bada
that'll be
bing,
the
bada
Snyder
boom.
cut. Yeah. Like that's the current trilogy or whatever. So yeah, that's
Make
awesome.
sure you take out all the Hamadaverse pamphlets that
Oh my
everything.
God, dude.
You know?
People got triggered over that on Netflix when he did that. It wasn't Film
Hey,
Gob, but
listen, Stimmet is a legend.
Yes.
That's all I gotta say.
and Film Gob actually referenced that in it, and he did something similar. And you got to trigger those guys. Those people really cared about those pamphlets, didn't they?
right. You know, I mean, you know, make sure you gotta take care of it. You know, put it under your pillow at night. Maybe the Hamada fairy will appear, give you a Batgirl solo or something.
Who's gonna do the? Yeah, I want to see who's gonna do the parody opposite of it, where they get it laminated, they put it in Mylar, and they someone's got to do
Make
that.
a shrine to it, you know.
Yes.
But make a star with a pentagram out of it and summon Hamada.
Oh, that's a video right there. Yep.
Film God, get on it.
That's right.
That's
Millennial, this has been a lot of fun. Thank you for being a part of the rotation of co-hosts. And why don't you let the Brokehead Corps know where they can find you and where they can kind of ping you if they want to continue the conversation?
Absolutely. Vero.co/millennialmike. You know, I get busy on there and then I stop and then I come back, but I'm regular for the most part. And then you can, of course, catch me on the Reasons We're Broke Discord channel. I'm on there. I'm relatively regular on there as well. If you want to see my own content, I'm actually making anime reaction videos and other anime content that's slowly coming out, but surely. I have a whole crop of Attack on Titan reactions from episode 1 of season 1 all the way to the final episode of the latest season 4. That's going to be coming out. So far, I have 3 episodes on my YouTube channel, which is Ronin Council. RONIN Council is the YouTube page. So definitely check that out.
Very cool. There will be links to everywhere you can find Millennial Mike in the description of today's episode. So in case you're driving, just come back to the description and click away and follow. Thank you again, Millennial Mike, for being on this week. I really do appreciate the takes on not just anime, because I know you're huge on that, but also on film, because, you know, we can really go high level on some of these, and I really respect your opinion. So I really appreciate it.
Oh, thank you. We'll see you again. We'll be back.
And everyone else, thank you so much for tuning in this week. I've been Daniel, and all will be well. I didn't get to ask you, who is your favorite kaiju? It could be Godzilla, but maybe outside of that.
I'm probably a hipster for saying this, but I really like the Clover from Cloverfield.
Nice.
I really wish they would have, like, you know, I'm one of the few who actually liked that Netflix the third one when they dropped it at the Super Bowl, like the third one, the Paradox one. I like that one, and I like the whole franchise, which is weird because nothing really actually connects. It's just. but they say it does. But yeah, no, I want more Clover content. Like, have Toho or Legendary like buy the rights and then, you know, get some Godzilla v Clover going on.
That'd be awesome. Yeah. Was the Paradox one the one with John Goodman?
No, that was the best one. That was what Cloverfield Lane,
Oh,
like
okay,
the
yeah, that's
12
right.
Cloverfield Lane, something like that. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
Paradox. I have to see that. That's one where they go into outer space or something. There's astronauts involved.
right, it's super weird, and it doesn't have anything to do with go. I mean, at the end, they did the little end credit scene where like they say it's connected, but it's good
Yeah.
anyway.
Yeah, I heard
It's
it was
cool.
one of those where like it was not a Cloverfield film and then they kind of made it into one afterward, after the fact or something. I don't know. I don't know if that's true or not, but that's a good answer though. The Clover. I didn't know that's what it was
Yeah.
called.
Well, yeah, that's the alien or whatnot. I think there's this like conspiracy that like there are the movies that you don't know where they go, or they're like one-off movies, are actually a part of the Clover franchise.
Interesting.
So, what is it a part of the Clover franchise or not? That's the question.
Yeah. Do you remember when they were doing all of those, that weird marketing of, I don't even know if I was in high school or college at that time, but it's like, here's this mysterious website and what's that slurm drink and what's that have to do with this? And people were analyzing that thing that fell from the sky in that footage. And it's like, did it come
Right,
from
right.
space or it was fascinating to me. It was
It was
really
so well
cool.
done.
Yeah.
J.J. Abrams, I believe, produced that movie, and I think it was directed. Well, the second one was directed by Matt Reeves. The first one, I forgot who directed that. I think J.J. directed it, maybe. I think
Hmm.
it's really good. I wish that he would stay there instead of DC, but we can't have what we want, can we? Not
No, no,
always.
we can't.